First story. I ignored school calls about my stepdaughter being sick, made jokes about her cramps, and banned her mom from taking her to the hospital, thinking she was faking her pain. It turns out the pain was real, and she needed surgery. My entitled wife demanded that I apologize, but I refused and told my stepdaughter to take it as a lesson to never lie again. Now I've lost everything. I 42M am married to my wife 47F, and have been in my stepdaughter's 15F life since she was about 6. We've been married for 8 years. I don't have any kids of my own, just her. The issue we've always had with her is school. She hates it. I don't mean normal teenage, ugh, school sucks. I mean, she'll do anything to not go. Since middle school, she's been faking illnesses, acting like she's about to faint, saying she's dizzy, coughing like she's about to pass out, all that. We've taken her to multiple doctors over the years, and every time, she's fine. My wife has tried to reason with her, bribe her, and even ground her. Nothing works. She just doesn't want to be in school. This has been going on for years, so I've learned to take whatever she says with a massive grain of salt. It sounds harsh, but we've literally been to the ER once because she said she couldn't breathe and was having chest pain. Turns out it was anxiety, and she was fine the next day. Missed a test too. Another time she threw up in the hallway at school after eating a huge breakfast and claimed food poisoning. She was caught texting a friend, "I think this will get me out for the day." That kind of thing. So last week, I got a call at around 11:30 am from my wife. She says the school nurse called her, and our daughter is in the office and says she's sick and wants to go home. My wife couldn't leave work and asked me to go get her since I work closer to the school. I show up, and she's sitting in the nurse's office chair, holding her stomach, saying she's in pain. I'm not going to lie, I thought she was faking again. She was crying a little, but I've seen her do that before too. Once she pretended to hyperventilate because she had a maths test that day. So I didn't think it was anything serious. I signed her out and walked her to the car. In the car, she asks me if we can go to the hospital or urgent care. I said no. I told her she could rest at home, drink water, and maybe take a nap. I wasn't about to spend a couple $100 on a doctor's visit, just for her to get told to take Tylenol. I was calm, not mean, but I was clear. She didn't argue much after that and just lay down on the back seat when we got home. She spent the day in bed. She didn't eat dinner, which was unusual, but again, she's dramatic. She barely came out of her room and didn't talk to us. I thought maybe she was just milking the sick thing to stay home the next day too. I left her alone. Then, at around 2 am, we hear screaming. I mean full-on panicked yelling. My wife and I jump out of bed and run into her room. She's on the floor, curled up and crying. She says her stomach hurts really bad, and she can't move. She's sobbing and trying to breathe through it, and my wife immediately kneels down and starts asking her questions. I was standing near the door and said something like, "Guess it's someone's time of the month." Not because I thought it was funny, but because she's had bad cramps before, and they've made her act like she's dying. Last time she made my wife go to the pharmacy at 1 am for heating pads and chocolate. So yeah, I assumed that's what it was. She kept crying and told us to call 911. My wife looked at me and said, "We need to take her in." I hesitated. I said maybe we should give it a bit, see if it passes, if she can go to the bathroom, if it's cramps. I didn't think it was urgent. I didn't think she was dying. I was being logical. Every other time this happened, she was totally fine by morning. My wife didn't wait for me to agree. She grabbed our daughter's shoes, helped her up, and practically carried her to the car. I stayed home with the dogs, texting my wife to keep me posted. She didn't text back for hours. I assumed they were waiting to be seen, or maybe getting a basic scan done. Around 6 am, I finally get a message. Her appendix burst. She's in surgery. I called my wife, and she didn't pick up. Eventually she called back and yelled at me over the phone. Said our daughter could have died, that she's lucky it didn't rupture worse, and that I was negligent. That I should have listened to her when she said she was in pain. That she told me she needed to go to the hospital, and I didn't listen. Look, I get it. That sounds bad. But my stance hasn't changed. If you had been in my shoes and seen how many times she's cried wolf, you would have made the same call. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a mind reader. I relied on the history we have with her and made a judgment call. And to be very clear, she didn't say, "I'm having sharp, stabbing pain," or "this is different." She just said her stomach hurt. Kids say that all the time. If she had said, "This is the worst pain I've ever felt," or "It feels like something is tearing inside," I would have reacted. She's 15, old enough to describe pain in detail. But all she said was, "My stomach hurts," and can we go to the doctor? That's it. Now my wife is saying I owe her daughter an apology. That I need to own up to how serious it was and say sorry to her face. I told her I don't feel like I have anything to apologize for. It's not that I don't care, it's that I didn't know. And I had no reason to think this time was any different from the dozens of fake times before. If anything, they owe me an apology for making me the default parent to deal with this every time. I'm not going to fake an apology. I don't mean just to make everyone feel better. That's not how I operate. If she wants to talk about it, fine. But I'm not going to sit there and beg for forgiveness for something I didn't do maliciously. I made a judgment call based on repeated behavior. It was the wrong call this time, fine. But that doesn't mean I was intentionally careless. It means I got burnt after being lied to over and over. My wife is still mad and sleeping in the guest room. Our daughter is back home recovering and hasn't said a word to me since she came back. I tried to say hi, and she just ignored me. My wife says she's processing and that I need to let her come around on her own. But I'm not going to beat myself up over this. I've seen this girl fake every symptom under the sun just to avoid school. I'm sorry she ended up actually being sick this time, but I'm not going to pretend I saw it coming. No one did. Not the school nurse, not my wife, not me. The only person who gets a pass here is the surgeon. So yeah, that's what happened. Ada? Comments. YTA. Look, I get where you're coming from. Your stepdaughter sounds like a professional manipulator when it comes to school avoidance. And yeah, that messes with your instincts. But here's the thing. Your wife knew something was off. She said take her in. Your kid asked to see a doctor. Even the school nurse thought she needed to be sent home, which doesn't always happen unless a kid seems truly off. And you? You took all that and still went. Meh, she's faking. That's not being logical, that's being jaded. You weren't neutral. You were dismissive. You chose to assume she was lying. That's on you. I also think your wife has a right to be pissed. She trusted you to be the backup parent, and you blew it. Doesn't mean you're evil, just that you need to recalibrate your approach before this gets worse. Apologize. Not because you were malicious, but because you were wrong. And if you want a future with that kid in your life, apologize. Comment 2. YTA. You've let her past behavior override your basic human decency. She asked to go to the doctor. She didn't demand a shopping spree or a day at the mall. She literally said, "Can we go to the doctor?" That's the bare minimum. You could have stopped at urgent care, sat in the parking lot, and told them her symptoms. You didn't even do that. Also, your whole attitude here screams, I don't care unless someone can prove pain on a chart. She's 15. You're the adult. The one time she actually was sick, you let your ego and frustration guide your decision. Then you make jokes about her period while she's on the floor. Jesus, man, I'd ignore you too. The apology isn't about you being right or wrong. It's about her almost dying and realizing her stepdad doesn't give a SHT unless it's convenient for him. Comment 3. Dude. You're NTA for thinking she was faking. I probably would have thought the same after years of bullshit. But you are tough for not covering your arse. You knew she was a drama queen and still didn't think, hey, what if this is the one time it's real? How hard is it to take her to urgent care and let them rule it out? You gambled and lost, and now you're acting like your ego's more important than the kid almost dying. Also, let's not ignore the fact that you didn't even go to the hospital afterwards. That's cold. Your wife dragged her into a car at 2 a.m. while you stayed home to watch the dogs. Bro, read that again. Out loud. The kid won't forget that, and neither will your wife. You don't need to fake an apology. You need to figure out if you even want to be part of that family anymore. Because right now, you sound checked out. Update. So, things have escalated. My wife isn't talking to me unless it's about bills or logistics. It's been about 2 weeks since the whole hospital situation. My stepdaughter's recovery went fine, the surgery was successful, and she's home now. But the tension in this house is unreal. The first few days after she got back, my wife basically told me to keep my distance. I thought she just needed time to cool off, but it's turned into something bigger. She told me she doesn't trust me anymore, her exact words, and that she's not sure she can be married to someone who abandons her kid in pain. That hit me as extreme, because I didn't abandon anyone. I made a judgment call. The next blow came when she told me she's removed me as an emergency contact at the school, hospital, and even from the pediatrician's file. She said she told them I'm not authorized to make medical decisions for her daughter anymore. I said, fine, that's your right, but inside I was pissed. I've been taking care of this kid for years, paying for clothes, food, rides, you name it. I didn't marry into this family to get treated like a babysitter with no authority. Then came the CPS thing. Apparently, because my stepdaughter told the doctors that she asked me to take her to the hospital earlier, and I didn't, it got flagged as possible medical neglect. Someone from CPS came by the house for a routine welfare check. The woman asked a ton of questions about what happened that night, my role in her care, and our home setup. I wasn't rude, but I told her straight that my stepdaughter has a pattern of lying to skip school and exaggerating symptoms. The caseworker nodded a lot, but didn't say much. She said they'd follow up if needed. My wife lost it when she found out. I told CPS about the faking. She said, "You just made her sound like a pathological liar to the state." My response was, "I told the truth. I'm not going to sugarcoat things just because it makes my wife uncomfortable." The caseworker hasn't been back since, so I assume that's done with. Anyway, I decided I'd try to smooth things over with my stepdaughter. She's barely looked at me since the hospital night. Won't talk, won't respond, won't even make eye contact. My wife told me to apologize properly. So one evening I went to her room. I told her I was sorry that she was in pain, and that I should have maybe taken her in sooner. I said I didn't mean to make her feel like I didn't care. But I also told her half joking, "Maybe now you'll stop faking being sick all the time." That didn't go over well. She didn't say anything at first, but her eyes just filled up with tears, and she said, "You still don't get it." Then she told me to leave her alone and shut the door in my face. I stood there for a minute, but what else was I supposed to do? She's been coddled by everyone since this happened, and I'm apparently the bad guy for not treating her like a porcelain doll. My wife heard about the joke I guess my stepdaughter told her, and that turned into another blowout fight. She said I'm incapable of empathy, and that I made everything worse. She told me flat out that whatever trust she had left in me as a parent figure is gone. She said if it weren't for the house being under both our names, she'd have told me to leave already. Well, she got her wish anyway. She asked me to go stay somewhere else, for a bit, to give her daughter space. So I packed a bag, and have been crashing at my brother's place for the last 4 days. She texts me updates about bills and groceries, but nothing else. No good morning, no how are you. Just cold, clipped messages like I'm her accountant. I asked if we're separating, and she said she doesn't know yet. She said she's focused on her daughter right now. Which basically means, yeah, she's considering it. I've had a lot of time to think and no, not in and I realized I was wrong way. I've been thinking about how quickly everyone threw me under the bus. My wife acts like I beat the kid. I didn't. I just didn't run to the ER for stomach pain after years of false alarms. People online and in real life act like I should have had psychic powers to know it was her appendix. Sorry, I'm human. Some people in the last thread said I lack empathy or awareness. Maybe. But it's hard to keep showing empathy to someone who's constantly manipulating you. I'm not a monster. I was exhausted by years of fake illnesses, missed work, doctor bills, and stress. And the one time it's real, I'm supposed to throw myself on the floor begging for forgiveness. No, that's not how trust works. And for the record, I did try to explain that to my wife. I wrote her a long message, basically a letter, laying it all out. I explained that my decision wasn't from neglect or cruelty. It was based on repeated experiences that shaped my reaction. I said I understood she was scared, but that doesn't make me a villain. I even said I'd be willing to do therapy, but only if the therapist isn't biased against step-parents, which most are, honestly. She didn't even reply to the letter. Just texted, "You don't get it. Stop trying to justify yourself." So yeah, that's where things stand. I'm staying at my brother's house. She's acting like a widow, and my stepdaughter probably thinks I'm Satan. I'm still paying the mortgage and half the bills, because I'm not going to let the house go into chaos. But it's ridiculous how fast everything flipped. I don't know what'll happen next. Maybe she'll calm down. Maybe she won't. But I'm not going to grovel for something I didn't do intentionally. People can say what they want, but I know I'm not the kind of man who'd purposely let a kid suffer. I made a judgment call based on history. It went bad. That's it. Life doesn't always split neatly into villains and victims. If that makes me the arsehole, then fine, I guess that's what I am. Comments. Comment 1. Jesus Christ. This was so much worse than the original post. You didn't just double down, you buried yourself under 6 more layers of denial. Your stepdaughter begged for help. Your wife begged you to take her seriously. A medical emergency happened right in front of you. And even now, after she literally had organ failure, you're still cracking jokes about her faking. Do you realize how traumatizing that is? She could have died thinking the adult in her house didn't care. The apology was disgusting. That wasn't an olive branch. It was another slap in the face. And the fact that you still see yourself as the victim here tells me you've got deeper issues with empathy than you're admitting. Don't go back. Honestly. Your wife and daughter deserve to feel safe in their own home. And that's never going to happen with you in it. Comment 2. I'm actually not surprised by the update. Your original post already had red flags that showed you see your stepdaughter less like a kid and more like a problem to manage. You've reduced her to the girl who fakes illnesses, instead of seeing her as a teenager clearly dealing with something, be it anxiety, school issues, or actual medical problems. And this update confirmed it. You didn't apologize, you tried to reset your control. That letter wasn't an explanation. It was damage control dressed in cold logic. When people say you lack empathy, this is exactly what they mean. Even now, you still can't just say, I messed up, I should have listened. It's honestly a bit chilling how detached you are from how close she was to dying. You didn't just fail as a stepparent, you failed as a human being. Comment 3. Look, I get it. You made a judgment call based on patterns. Kids fake stuff, especially when school sucks. I did the same at her age. I don't think you're evil. Just stubborn. But man, you did mess this up. It happens. We all screw up sometimes. But if you want your marriage to work, you have to own that your judgment failed this time. Even if she faked it 99 times before, that one time was real, and it mattered. And bro, that maybe stop faking now line, come on. You might have thought you were being funny, but to her, that probably cemented that you don't care. If you're serious about fixing things, don't explain, don't defend. Just listen and mean it. Otherwise you'll lose them both, and no one's going to feel bad for you. Update. I guess this will be the last time I post here, since there's really nothing left to salvage. For anyone who read my original post and the first update, this is how it all played out. I was staying at my brother's place for a couple weeks while things at home cooled off, or so I thought. My wife never gave me a timeline, just said she needed space. I kept paying half the mortgage, like always, and assumed I'd come back once her daughter had recovered enough to move past everything. One day, I drove back to the house to pick up some paperwork I needed for work. I still had a key, but when I put it in, it didn't turn. Locks were changed. I knocked. No answer. Called her. No answer. Finally got a text 5 minutes later. You should have told me you were coming. Don't show up unannounced again. This is our safe space now. I'm her husband. It's my damn house too. I didn't respond. I just drove off. I should have expected it, she warned me, but it still hit hard. A few days later, I asked if we could talk. She agreed to meet at a public spot. Told me she's officially filing for separation and eventually divorce. She said she needs to protect her daughter's mental health and can't be married to someone who refuses to reflect on how much damage they've caused. When I asked her if she was really going to throw away an 8-year marriage over one mistake, she looked at me and said, "It wasn't one mistake. It was the final one." Apparently, my stepdaughter's been doing better. She's eating again, talking, and laughing with her friends. She told her mom she doesn't feel like she has to hide in her room anymore. I guess I was that bad of a presence. The worst part? She's not even calling me her stepdad anymore. She told her mom, "He's just her husband. He's not my family." She even blocked my number. I wasn't invited to her follow-up appointments. No one tells me anything about her health anymore. So I tried therapy. Not because I thought I was wrong, but because I figured maybe a third party could help everyone calm down. I agreed to go to a family session. We all sat there. Me, my wife, her daughter, and the therapist. It was a setup. The therapist didn't ask me anything. Just asked them how they felt and how they were coping. When I tried to explain how this was a pattern of behavior that created the situation, the therapist cut me off and said, "This isn't about defending choices. This is about listening." The therapist even told my wife, with me sitting right there, that my stepdaughter needed space to heal from emotional invalidation. So I walked out halfway through. I'm not paying to sit in a chair and be accused of emotional abuse because I didn't drive someone to urgent care. I tried posting on another sub-R stepparents. Thought maybe someone would get where I was coming from. And yeah, I got some support. Other stepparents said they've had the same struggles, same lies, and same manipulation. It helped for a day or two. But the second I mentioned the appendix thing, most people turned on me too. So much for empathy. Meanwhile, my wife's just moved on. I know she's been meeting up with someone. I saw a picture tagged on a friend's Instagram. Some guy from her gym. No surprise. Probably already had that lined up before I even moved out. Last week, I officially withdrew from the mortgage. Signed the quitclaim. She can have the house. I'm not going to fight for a place I'm locked out of. I'll keep my money, rebuild, and find something better on my own terms. No more trying to explain myself. No more therapy sessions where I'm the punching bag. No more fake family dinners. If they want to paint me as the villain, fine. I've been the one driving, paying bills, and cleaning up after both of them for years, while she played single mom and her kid played the victim. I didn't leave. I was pushed out. And now that I'm out, I'm done pretending this was ever a real family to begin with. The post OP is talking about he posted in our Stepdaughters. Hi all. Long-time reader, first-time poster here. I'm a stepdad 42M to a 15-year-old girl. Been in her life since she was 6. Married to her mum 47F for 8 years. I've done everything for this family, worked full-time, paid for vacations, clothes, orthodontics, you name it. I'm not her biological dad, but I've been a stable father figure while her real dad is barely involved. The issue is this. My stepdaughter has a very long history of faking illnesses to avoid school. We're not talking once or twice, I mean dozens of incidents. Nurse's office calls, fake coughs, pretending to faint, stomach aches that magically vanish after skipping a test. We've been to urgent care more times than I can count. Every time, nothing's wrong. We've talked to doctors, therapists, and school counselors, they all say it's behavioral. And yeah, it's exhausting. A couple weeks ago, she was in the nurse's office again, saying her stomach hurt. My wife couldn't leave work, so I went to pick her up. She asked to go to the doctor. Based on her track record, I told her we'd just go home and rest. She didn't look pale or feverish, just in pain, which, frankly, we've seen 100 times. She lay in bed most of the day. Around 2 a.m. She got up crying and said her stomach hurt worse. My wife wanted to rush her to the hospital, but I suggested we give it a minute. I thought it might be cramps or gas. She's had similar episodes before. Eventually my wife took her in, and they ended up keeping her overnight. I won't go into the medical details out of respect for privacy, but she's fine now and recovering. But since then, my wife's been totally cold to me. Says I let her daughter suffer, and calls it neglect. She took me off all medical forms, changed the locks on the house, and asked me to move out temporarily. Even my stepdaughter refuses to speak to me. I tried to apologize, but it didn't land. I said I was sorry she felt bad that day, but also reminded her gently that this wouldn't have happened if she hadn't cried wolf so many times. That apparently was insensitive. Now my wife says she's filing for separation, and that I'm no longer part of the family. For making a medical judgment call based on years of consistent behavior. I've been portrayed like I'm some kind of monster. But I never yelled, never hit, never ignored her. I just didn't jump into panic mode over a vague stomachache. And now I've lost my home, my marriage, and a relationship I tried to build for years, all because I didn't overreact. Have any of you dealt with this kind of fallout? I feel like I was put in an impossible position, be the rational adult, and get vilified for it. Comments. Comment 1. Man, I feel this so hard. I've got a 14-year-old stepson who used to fake migraines like clockwork every time there was a maths quiz. His mum would freak out and want to take him to the chalet, and I'd get painted as the cold one for saying, "Let's just wait." You're not alone. You didn't ignore her, you made a reasonable call based on her pattern. Parents make judgment calls every day. You didn't lock her in a basement or deny her food. You assessed the situation like any logical person would have. Sucks that your wife doesn't have your back. Once that trust breaks between spouses, especially over discipline or health stuff, it's hard to come back. But don't let them rewrite history like you were abusive. You were just tired of being lied to. Period. Comment 2. Honestly, you're the only one who acted like a parent here. Your wife reacted emotionally, and your stepdaughters are used to manipulating that. And now they're punishing you because you didn't play into the drama this one time. People act like we're supposed to treat every fake stomachache like a medical emergency. That's just not sustainable. You've been stepping up for years with no credit, and the one time you try to apply logic instead of fear, they turn on you. You have every right to be hurt and frustrated. This isn't about you failing, it's about them never truly accepting you as a parent in the first place. Comment 3. This situation just confirms my worst fear about step-parenting. You're expected to act like a dad until you do, and then suddenly you're overstepping or heartless. You've clearly done your part: years of support, financial help, and showing up. And you made a mistake based on precedent, not neglect. What's crazy is they're acting like you should have had a crystal ball. You weren't psychic, just human. If she'd been honest in the past, you'd have responded differently. You don't owe anyone groveling. If anything, they owe you for throwing you out like trash over one call. Second story. My dad wants a memorial for my sister at my wedding after doing it on my birthday. No one likes her besides my dad, and I don't want grief to ruin my big day. What do I do? I know the title sounds bad. I was hoping people might be able to assess this objectively and give suggestions, especially if they've been at weddings with memorials before. Unfortunately, for me, this is a trickier situation than I'd like because of who my sister was. I'm changing small details to make it harder to identify this situation if anyone I know happens across it. My younger sister passed away last year. She was an adult, but young, and it was sudden. I don't want to go into too much detail, but she made some bad choices that contributed to her short life. She was also not well mentally. She had an extremely tumultuous relationship with my mum and me. Some ups, but mostly very nasty downs, especially during years when we tried to save her from herself. On the other hand, my dad was often idealized by her, and they had a better relationship. My fiancé did not have a good relationship with her either. Her final years and death were traumatic for our whole family. It's especially impacted my dad. Since she passed, my dad has made a point of eulogizing her at every family event. We've had to remember her and make sure she was present. It's always been difficult for both my mum and me because I have a lot of intense, difficult emotions surrounding her and her passing. I always cry for hours, and I end up feeling downhearted and out of sorts for days after each one of these surprise memorial events. My dad will be the officiant at our wedding. It's very soon. I only recently learned that he plans to memorialize her during the ceremony and in his toast. I really don't want him to do this, but he's extremely resistant because he doesn't want to pretend like she was never here. I will admit that it is childish for me to feel bitter about someone who is no longer here. But growing up, I had a lot of events hijacked by her causing some incident. And now it feels like it's happening again, even when she's passed. If we had a better relationship, I might have been more okay with taking a moment to remember her. But my dad tends to lionize her, and has a selective memory where he's forgotten everything bad. He was shocked when I said I wasn't comfortable with her being mentioned in a speech outside of my own baggage. My fiancé certainly doesn't want her mentioned. This is not just a my side of the family event like the previous memorials. I also fear it will bring down what's supposed to be a happy time and make the guests sad or uncomfortable. I want to try to compromise with him by having my mum. He and I wear yellow jewelry in discreet places to remember her yellow was her favorite color. But I'm not sure if he'd be okay with this because it's too secret. Long story short. How can I let my dad feel like we're honoring my sister's memory without upsetting my mum, my fiancé, and myself too much to enjoy the day? I'm at a loss, and it's hard for me to approach this objectively. Edit. I need to go to bed, so I won't be replying further. But I wanted to thank the people who offered condolences and advice, and also those who were rightfully saying, "Girl, what are you thinking?" when I said maybe I should just let him do it. I've gotten a lot of great ideas for other ways of remembering people, not just my sister, and ways to handle it if my dad tries anyway. I'm having a serious discussion with him tomorrow, and if I get any hint that he's going to ignore my fiancés and my wishes, then we'll find another officiant. Wish I'd been smart enough to fully settle this issue months ago, instead of days from the wedding. But lesson learned about clear communication there. Thanks again. Comments by OP. My mother and I have both tried to talk about how we process grief differently, especially given how difficult our relationships with my sister were. That's part of why I wasn't expecting him to do this at this event, because he did it for my birthday, and I had to talk about how hard that was. Unfortunately, I guess I didn't make the impression that I thought I did. I don't want to ask him to step down as the officiant, because I think that would really hurt him and cause more problems than just letting this happen. I just hope I could find some compromise that allows him to feel like he's not forgetting about his other daughter without making me too depressed to be a good wife to my fiancé or hostess to my guests. It really messes with me when I think about her death too much. Regarding, I don't know why you'd expect this to be different. Ogh, tell me about it. I thought it was understood that this was not the time, but I was not clear enough, and I should have been clearer. I'd like to do some kind of counseling. My excuse, I'm aware it's an excuse, is that I'm working a job where finding extra time is difficult. Just in the lead up to the wedding, I've been going to bed at 3 and waking up at 8 just to be sure I do everything I need to for work and wedding planning. Admittedly, I fall into the trap where I think, I just need to find a good time. But the time has, of course, not magically presented itself. My dad tried grief counseling briefly, but he quit after a few sessions and refuses to try again. He thought it was too impersonal. My mom and I, but especially my mom, have become his therapists instead, which is not awesome for us for the reasons you could imagine. I think convincing him to do family counseling would be difficult. If nothing else, this is a good reminder that I need to more seriously pursue counseling for myself, even if he doesn't want to try. Unfortunately, it's a matter of days. That's why I haven't just said he shouldn't officiate. Finding someone else this soon would be a bear, and the emotional turmoil of saying he can't officiate would, I think, make things even worse than letting him do the memorial speeches for a variety of reasons. He's also shown that he will just kind of do things to memorialize her, even when he's not in an official position. So I think that wouldn't really stop him if he were determined. That's why I'm hoping that I can find a compromise that's less obtrusive, so he doesn't feel guilty without literally calling everyone's attention to my sister's death. I worry about that sort of thing, people thinking they're being proactive and thoughtful by mentioning the death in ways to mourn. But it's just way more upsetting to you than if you could have just let it be processed internally instead of in front of other people. I can compartmentalize, but I can't when people are talking to me about it. I have a terrible fear that I just have to steel myself for comments and condolences all night when I'm just trying to have a day where I'm not thinking about death for once. The special flower or colors are a nice idea, as well as including things relevant to my fiancé, so it's not just for my sister again. My fiancé did not like her because of her being protective of me, so the thought of dedicating the wedding to her is not sitting well. The more I've thought of it since leaving this comment and post, the more I realize it wouldn't be worth it to just let this happen. I'll need to discuss options for another officiant with my fiancé. Really hoping it won't come to that, and my dad understands and agrees to not mention the death when I talk to him about it tomorrow morning, especially if I frame it as, if you can't stop yourself, we can't have you officiate. But just letting him do it is not what would be best for everyone. Or really anyone. A moment of silence is a good idea, especially if it's about all those who couldn't be here, not just my sister. I know my fiancé has relatives who passed a long time ago, but the sadness lingers who would have been wanted here. I can ask my man of honor dude best friend, haha, to step in if things go off the rails, even if my dad is not an officiant and is just doing a toast. He has a good relationship with my dad, so I trust him to do it sensitively. That's a really good idea too, thank you. Regarding what you said about whether he wants us to be in pain. God, I hope not. I don't think so. I think he's trying everything he can to make the pain stop. But nothing can. He does other rituals that are more personal, which I'm happy he does if it helps him. It's just this that can be really hard on us. The eulogies seem to help him with the guilt he feels about not being able to save her from herself. Something we all deal with in different ways. About moving on, about everything. It's a really bad situation for a little bit, but only for a little. I think it's also an I would like others to do this for me thing, which I get. Imagining people just celebrating and living life after you pass on is existentially terrifying, but it is something that happens to everyone. I know we're missing those who have passed before, too. Grandma on my fiancé's side and great aunt and grandpa on mine. I think my fiancé would be touched by that, if it wouldn't be too hard to even take that moment. I'll make sure it's okay with my fiancé before offering it as an idea to my dad, of course. Update. I received a number of requests for an update to this, so here we are. It's a good update, thankfully. I spoke with my dad the morning after making the post. I tried to emphasize that mentioning my sister's passing in detail at the wedding would be very difficult emotionally for my mother and me, would take away from my fiancé's now husband's day, and would probably make the guests uncomfortable or saddened. He said he was resistant at first because he's been so afraid of my sister's memory fading away, but that ultimately he understood my concerns. He still wanted her present in some way that wouldn't take away from our day. I offered suggestions that people gave for ways to have her memory present. We decided to have a seat reserved for past loved ones at the ceremony, and an empty seat with a name tag for her at the wedding party's table during the reception dinner. My dad was the officiant as originally planned, and he gave a beautiful speech at the ceremony and a heartfelt toast that was focused on the joy of the day instead of the sadness of the past. As far as I'm aware, everyone at the wedding had a wonderful time, and the only tears shed were happy ones. I know that there were multiple commenters who said my dad should be replaced as the officiant no matter what, but I'm glad I didn't do that after the wedding was over. He gave me a big hug, crying because it meant so much to him that we trusted him to do the ceremony, and how happy it made him to be such a big part of the wedding. It meant a lot to my husband and me, too. Moral of the story. Sometimes it takes a few tries to get it right, but honest and heartfelt communication between everyone involved won the day here. Thanks again to everyone who left advice, comfort, well wishes, and grandma hugs. I did not at all anticipate the interest in my post. But I'm grateful for everyone's comments, even if I ran out of time to reply to everyone. In the end, it was a perfect wedding, and I couldn't be happier with how it turned out. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.